In chemical dependency counseling, professional ethics is fundamentally woven into the clinical work, rather than just added onto it. These standards guide every intake screening, every counseling session you hold, and every clinical referral you make. Counselors hold significant power over individuals who are often navigating their most vulnerable moments. You handle deeply private information while operating in clinical environments characterized by ambiguity and professional temptation. A rigorous ethical foundation exists primarily to shield those clients from direct harm. It also provides a secondary layer of protection for your credential, your livelihood, and the credibility of the entire profession. This protective structure rests on a small set of core principles. The true test of this discipline is applying these principles consistently, especially when a shortcut is available and no one is watching. This invisible ethical architecture provides the essential structural foundation that makes the entire clinical relationship possible and safe. Most helping professions rely on a shared foundation of 6 ethical pillars to guide clinical reasoning. The first pillar is autonomy, respecting the client's right to make their own decisions about their life and treatment. This is followed by beneficence, the mandate to actively promote the client's well-being. Non-maleficence sets the baseline expectation for all clinicians. Above all, do no harm. Justice requires that you treat all clients fairly and equitably, without discrimination. Fidelity requires you to remain faithful to your commitments and maintain a trustworthy relationship. Finally, veracity dictates honesty and truthfulness with both your clients and colleagues. These principles frequently collide in daily practice. Respecting a client's autonomy can clash directly with your professional duty to prevent them from causing harm. Maintaining veracity can sometimes appear to conflict with acting compassionately. Resolving these tensions requires careful, deliberate reasoning, rather than the mechanical application of a single rule. This reasoning must stay anchored to the specific code of ethics governing your credential, such as those from the OCDP Board, ANADAC, and the IC&RC. Clinicians prove their professional skill when they successfully navigate the friction that occurs when these deeply held values collide. To keep the relationship focused on the client's needs, we establish professional boundaries. These limits protect the client from exploitation and ensure the counselor's judgment remains clear and objective. Ethical problems often start with a boundary crossing, a minor departure from standard practice that might initially seem completely harmless to the clinician. This might involve an extra-long session, accepting a small gift, or a self-disclosure that is more personal than professional. Unexamined crossings can create a slide toward harmful boundary violations that damage the client. A counselor must constantly question whose needs are actually being served by any specific action or departure from routine. Specific areas like physical contact and social media interactions require constant vigilance. When you encounter boundary uncertainty, you are expected to bring it directly to clinical supervision. Catastrophic ethical failures are almost always the predictable result of a slow, unchecked slide across these minor boundaries. A dual or multiple relationship exists when you have a secondary role with a client, such as being their friend, employer, or landlord. These secondary roles are high risk because they cloud clinical judgment and create conflicts of interest. Firm, clear tone. Sexual or romantic relationships with current clients are never acceptable under any circumstances. In rural areas or tight-knit communities, some dual relationships are impossible to avoid. Counselors in recovery must be particularly vigilant if they attend the same mutual help meetings as their clients. When an overlap is unavoidable, you must manage it through transparency, keeping the client's interests first and setting clear secondary boundaries. Clinical supervision is required to monitor these overlapping rules and maintain objectivity. When the clinical frame meets the real world, proactive transparency serves as your primary defense against exploitation. Facing an ethical dilemma requires a structured process rather than a gut reaction. Step 1 is to identify the problem, the competing values, and all involved stakeholders. Step 2 is to consult the relevant codes of ethics, laws, and agency policies. Step 3 requires you to map the ethical principles at stake and identify who could be harmed by each option. Step 4 is to generate possible courses of action and weigh their likely consequences. Step 5 is consultation. Speaking with supervisors and colleagues helps eliminate the blind spots that often accompany isolation. Step 6 is to decide, act, and then document the reasoning behind your decision. Finally, step 7 is to reflect on the to slow down, consult others, and document your reasoning is what distinguishes a professional from an improviser. True clinical competence is the willingness to admit uncertainty and use a shared framework to protect the client.